Hello and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into human resources management. Now, if you're picturing a dusty office filled with filing cabinets, think again. We're going to explore how modern HR has evolved into the strategic core of any successful business, figuring out how to unlock the true potential of a company's most important asset, its people.
So, here's what's on the docket. We're going to see how HR went from just an administrative function to a strategic one. Then we'll get into all the different forces, both inside and outside a company, that shape how you plan your workforce. And finally, we'll look at the human side of things, why people naturally push back against change, and what great leaders do about it.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the basics of HRM, move into the nitty-gritty of planning, look at the big picture forces at play, and then tackle the challenge of change. Okay, let's jump right in. What is human resource management really? And how is it so different from what we used to call the personnel department? Well, the difference is huge, and it's all about a shift in mindset. Here it is, side by side. You see, old-school personnel management was like a checklist. You hired someone, you trained them, you paid them. Each task was in its own little box. But human resource management, or HRM, throws that whole idea out the window. It's an integrated approach that asks a much bigger question. How do all these things work together to push the entire company toward its goals? It's about strategy, not just administration. So in practice, modern HRM really zeroes in on three main goals. First, you've got to be looking ahead, developing the skills your people will need tomorrow, not just today. Second, it's about building a culture where people actually want to work, one that keeps them loyal and committed. And third, you have to be able to pivot. The world changes. I mean, look at what the pandemic did to our work lives, and HR has to be ready to respond. So, if HRM is so strategic, how do companies actually go about planning for their people? Well, it's not guesswork. It all starts with a blueprint. And that blueprint is called the Human Resources Plan. Think of it as a roadmap. It takes a hard look at the workforce you have right now, figures out what you're going to need down the line, and then lays out the exact steps you need to take to close that gap. It's all about getting the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time. This is a brilliant way to visualize it. It's basically a big balancing act. On one side of the scale, you have the company's demand for labor, the jobs you need to fill. On the other side, you have the supply, the people available to do those jobs. The HR plan is what keeps those scales balanced, suggesting actions like hiring new talent or training up your existing team. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because this planning doesn't happen in a neat little bubble. Nope, it's constantly being pushed and pulled by massive forces out in the real world. One of the biggest forces is demography. That's just a fancy word for the study of populations, their size, their age, how they're structured. And believe me, these population trends have huge, huge implications for any company trying to build a workforce. Take a look at this chart. You might just see some lines going down, but to an HR planner, this is a flashing red light. It shows that global fertility rates have been falling off a cliff. What does that mean for a business? It means the future pool of young workers is shrinking, which is going to make the competition for top talent incredibly fierce. Another game-changing shift is in the very definition of a job. It sparked a huge debate, especially for companies like Uber and Lyft. It boils down to this fundamental question. Are the people doing the work actually employees, or are they independent contractors? And that, of course, brings us to the gig economy. For companies, it offers amazing flexibility and can lower costs. But from an HR perspective, it's a massive headache. You're dealing with everything from worker rights and legal issues to how you build a stable, trained workforce when people are coming and going all the time. And you knew this one was coming, technology. It's the ultimate double-edged sword for HR. You've got automation taking over routine jobs, which is great, but it's also creating a frantic demand for brand new skills. And on top of that, technology has completely shattered the old 9-to-5 office model, making remote and hybrid work a permanent part of the landscape, a change that COVID-19 put into hyperdrive. So you take all of these forces together, demographics, the gig economy, tech, and they all point to one single constant, change. But here's the secret. Managing change isn't about the new software or the new strategy. It's about the people. And people, well, people often don't like change. This diagram does a great job of breaking down why we resist. It's so easy to just label someone as difficult, but it's rarely that simple. A lot of the time, it comes down to plain old self-interest, a fear that you're going to lose something you value. Other times, it's a genuine misunderstanding. Or maybe you just honestly believe the new way is a bad idea. And sometimes, we just like things the way they are. Because of this, good managers have a whole toolkit of strategies to help people through change. You almost always want to start at the top of this list with clear communication, real support, and getting people involved in the process. The more forceful methods down at the bottom, those are really a last resort for when things get dire.
And at the end of the day, it all comes back to this legendary quote from management guru Peter Drucker. It is just so true. You can have the most brilliant, data-driven strategy on paper, but if it goes against the grain of your company's culture, the culture will win every single time. Why? Because strategy is what you plan to do, but culture is what people actually do when the boss isn't looking.
Wow, okay, we've covered a ton of ground today, from the big picture of what HR is to the tiny details of managing change. Let's wrap it up with the key things to remember. So if you take away anything, remember this: modern HR is a strategic partner, not just a paper pusher. The HR plan is its core blueprint for aligning people with goals. That plan is never static. It's always adapting to huge external forces. And ultimately, success or failure often comes down to how well you manage the deeply human side of change. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. As technology like AI and new ways of working continue to completely rewrite the rules of what a job even is, what do you think is the single most important skill an HR leader will need to have in the next 10 years? Is it about data, empathy, something else entirely? That's something to really think about.